All right. Recording. Welcome, everyone, to the third Thursday Co-Creators Convergence Call. I'm Noelle Marshall, and I'm here with my beloved.
Hi, I'm Bob Warner.
And Bob and I are very grateful to have everyone on the call tonight. And we're here at Sunrise Ranch under the greeting tree that some of you might recognize, especially Janice and Kathy and others who are at CCC 2016. But anyway, we have a wonderful two guests. But before we get to our guests, Bob, do you want to tell them a little bit about CCC for those who, the Co-Creators Convergence, for those that don't know?
Absolutely. Thank you. And
the
welcome.
Few in the world that haven't heard about us.
Right. And welcome, Janet. The Co-Creators Convergence is a group of pioneering souls that first started to come together as a result of being students and fans and readers of works of Barbara Marx Hubbard. And also many of us recognizing the source within each of us and the importance of us being in a collective to co-create with each other a world that the humanity and this planet deserves. And so we're very excited to have you here. We have been joining together since middle of 2013. We've been doing calls either twice a month or once a month since that time. And we are delighted to have everybody here and listening at a later date, or watching this Zoom call at a later date. There are 4 ways that we get together as a Co-Creators Convergence. One is that annually, we just completed last month our 5th annual Co-Creators Convergence at live, sitting in circle together at Sunrise Ranch, where Noelle and I are now. A second way is 24/7, the co-creatorsconvergence.com website, and which, by the way, has all of our archived conversations that we've had since 2014, all archived there. So amazing, amazing conversations that we've had over the last few years. And of course, a very active Facebook page. And what's the 4th way?
Well, they can come to the next year's CCC.
Oh yeah, they can come to next year's CCC. I thought there were 4 ways. And there's another way. We are, in fact, all connected all the time. Through time and space, we know this community has always been destined to be a community. We are finding others that know that that's the case for them all the time, primarily through all the people that are part of this community now, sharing the opportunity to be a part of this circle on a continuing basis. So welcome everybody to the call. Very excited to have Sandie and Suzy here this evening, and back to you.
Thanks, Bob. So I just want to tell a little tale that I met Sandie Sedgbeer through Leanne. And I met Sandie actually in Dominer, Italy. And we had a wonderful time there, and she helped us before. She received an award last year at this year's CCC for hosting Regina Meredith on one of our calls, and that was
amazing conversation.
She's one of my favorites, so she gets extra stars for that. And Sandie has her own radio show. She's done many things. She's interviewed, I think, maybe everybody on the planet, that has anything to do with spirituality. Her reach is incredible. So she's very connected and has been at this for a long time, not like us hacks. It just, woke up recently, we'll say. So, and anyway, so I'm going to turn it over to Sandie, who introduced us to Suzy Miller, who's the first time we've had direct communication. But I'm just going to tell one little story about Suzy Miller, is that she and I share a past career as speech-language pathologists. And I work with adults, primarily with head injury and stroke rehabilitation. And Sandie, she worked with autism, and in her vocabulary, it's awesomism.
Awesome.
So she talks about the awesomeness of the autistic child. But she's multi-talented, and now recently you may have seen that I put up that Sandie and Suzy did a symposium about the journey back to love. And so I thought, what do we need more right now on this planet is love. So I'm going to turn it over to my good friend Sandie and Suzy, and my new friend Suzy, and let you all take it away. And I hope you leave about a half hour at least at the end for some questions and interaction. And Thank you so much for being here and everyone for showing up for this time together. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
Well, hi everybody. Before we started, I think, Noelle, you said you wanted me to tell people how I met Suzy Miller. I've been a journalist and an interviewer for many, many years. And back in 2003, I started a magazine called Children of the New Earth because I saw what was happening with the new kids. And I really felt the whole information needed to be grounded. It was too woo-woo. And if we were going to get any attention, we needed to ground it. And I wanted to build a bridge between the metaphysical and the mainstream. So I started a magazine called Children of the New Earth. And after about 6 months or so, I received a submission of an article, and I love telling this story, from Suzy Miller. And our magazine was kind of woo-woo, but not completely. I looked at the article, I thought it was great, but I thought, no, this is too far out for us. I'm trying to bring the information down here. So I rejected it. But Suzy persevered. And sometime later, she sent me another one that was so good. And I remember it to this day. It was an article about how one can look at a child in a classroom that might be behaving in a specific way. And you could look at it through a teacher's eyes, but you could also stand back and you could look at it through different eyes. And you can look at it through the multidimensional eyes, the energetic eyes. And I thought it was such a fabulous article that I decided I'd publish it. And so we began to talk here and there about her. I gave her a column and she produced some fabulous articles. And then one day I got a call from a publicist saying to me, and I hadn't met her in person at this time, saying Suzy Miller's produced a book called Awesomeism, a new way to understand the diagnosis of autism. Could we count on you for your support? And I heard myself say, Suzy Miller can have anything she wants. And as I said it, I thought, where did that come from? And it wasn't until, but I meant it. And it wasn't until 2009 when I actually moved to Arizona, where Suzy Miller happens to live, that we met in person. And then I realized why I'd said that, because Suzy Miller is a kindred spirit. She's somebody who is doing work that I think is so important. So important, not just for the kids, but for all of us, that, I'll give her anything she wants and I'll share her in any way I can. And honestly, I do not have as much to contribute to tonight as Suzy Miller does. I'm just the sharer. I do the interviews, I find people, and if I think that they've got something great, then I want to share them with everyone. So I'm kind of going to hand over to Suzy now so she can talk to you a little bit about her journey and how that led to the journey back to love.
Thanks, Sandie, and I'm going to hold you to giving me anything I want. I'm going to keep coming back to you over and over again. So, yeah, it's, gosh, it's like sometimes, you find people in your life that just, from the moment you first meet them, it's just a click, it's a yes, it's, and regardless of whether she was giving me everything I wanted or not, I would still spend all the time with her. She's amazing. I guess, do you want me to start with that, Noelle, or would you like me to start with a grounding of some sort? Do you want to start with that part first?
I'm going to let you just follow your guidance. So whatever you think is great.
Okay, so we'll do the introduction first, then we'll do that. It's like you said, Noelle, you and I both started as speech language pathologists, and I was having some pretty amazing experiences with children diagnosed with autism once that really became a predominant factor in consciousness, in awareness, in the school systems and everything. And so I actually had one really amazing conversation with a kid diagnosed with autism that basically completely shifted not only my perception of autism, but it literally shifted how I saw the world. I was looking very much at that time through the eyes of an educator. I had a science background, an education background. I was in private practice at the time. So, I had that focus in my life, IBM wife and 4 little kids, that kind of thing. And then all of a sudden I have this little kid diagnosed with autism who is speaking to me telepathically, showing me his light body and telling me that I'm there to put his light body back into his physical body, and I don't know what the heck he's talking about. And so all of this is like came about in a flash, like literally in one day. I learned that I had skills that I didn't know I had. And to top it off, the kid looked me right in the eye and he just said, "Master?" And I was like, "I don't know what you're talking about." You know, it's like, leave me alone kind of thing. And, you know, but you have that kind of scenario happen in your life if you do have it. And you come away from that. I remember going back, sitting in my car after all this had happened, and just sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, my life has just changed. And it changed indeed, because from the moment he kind of activated something in me, I felt like he had put a key in and unlocked something. And the minute it got unlocked, there were all kinds of different beings that were showing up. There were all kinds of telepathic communications that were going on, not just with the child that I was seeing, but with all of my clients. And so the first year was kind of a crazy making, because there was all kinds of stuff happening all at the same time. And so it was wonderful, and it was scary, and it was life-changing in the fact that it altered my physical reality. You know, you have people in your life who know you one way, and then all of a sudden you're having experiences that you can't explain to them. I couldn't even explain them to myself, let alone to somebody else. And even to the point where some of the children were like bilocating and sitting at the end of my bed and talking to me, or other beings were. And so I'm getting up in the middle of the night talking to who's at the end of my bed, and my husband at the time is going, "You lost your cookies." You know, it's like, you've lost the plot here. So, and you know, there were moments when I really thought I had. But what was beautiful about it, there's just this amazing transformation in the way I saw everything. I went from seeing things as broken that needed to be fixed to things that were really, to hold. There was already mastery there. If there was mastery in me that I didn't know existed, then my assumption was that there was mastery in everybody that I didn't know existed. And then if I started looking for that mastery, that I could pay more attention to that than all the ideas where we feel like we're not loved or broken or whatever. And if I could pay attention to that, then I could support the facilitation of people coming into that. It's like, just hold that reference point. And so that's, you know, the kids taught me so much about seeing beyond what I had seen before. They taught me an awful lot about loving beyond what I thought I could love before. And as such, I slowly began to facilitate others. They would, after awesomism, they asked that I start this practitioner process, which I did. That went through its course, and then it kind of came out to this more general concept of, you know, what actually is love? You know, we perceive love in kind of the Valentine way, or the kind of cookie cutter way as to what society says that love is supposed to mean. But very rarely do we see love as the entirety of all that is. And so that's kind of where I am playing now in the journey back to love. So, yeah, hopefully that gives a little bit of an entry point.
And if I can jump in here, I have to say, I've done pretty much most of the work that Suzy has produced. I mean, you know, I don't base my judgment just totally on my intuition. I like to have the experiences. So I experienced her level 1 and level 2 of awesomism. And then when she started birthing the journey back to love, I said, you know, I want some of that. We all need more of that. And I went through that process. And I'm not an easy person to impress, and I'm not an easy person to move emotionally. But I found that one week I'd be crying my eyes out, and the next week I'd be giggling, and all sorts of things were happening to me through this process. And I realized that, and my outer world started reflecting all of that as well. And all of this stuff started coming up about love, about childhood conditioning, about patterns. And by the end of it, I felt so different that I said to Suzy, you know, this is something I really would like to share with others. And I know that there are a lot of people who've got pieces of the pie to add to this, but I felt Suzy had like the core of it, the foundation of it for me. And the others had other pieces that could explain to people, you know, where it all starts, where all these issues and challenges and misconceptions that we develop about love and about ourselves begin. And so we talked about it, and we conceived the Journey Back to Love Symposium. So we picked 8 people, and originally Suzy was going to be the 9th, if you like. But what was very, very clear, she was such a fundamental piece of the whole thing, you know, that she had to be in every single segment, because what she had to say dovetailed so beautifully or expanded upon what other people, you know, shed more light on what some of our speakers were giving. So that's how the Journey Back to Love Symposium, which is separate from the Journey Back to Love class or program that Suzy presents, all came about.
Yeah, we had a really good time getting that all started, and you are a hard nut to crack. So when you gave that testimonial, I was going, yes, this is wonderful. Yeah, it really is. It's really happening. So
yeah, I mean, you know, here's the thing, and I'm sure we've all experienced it. We've all been on this road for so many years, and it's getting to the point now where we're getting a little bit jaded with some of the same old stuff. And people who appear to be creating their platforms based on other people's work, people that have, you know, been around and doing this for many, many years. And I really felt we needed something much more grounded, something much more meaningful. I mean, summits have been around for about 5 years now, and people are getting jaded with those. And that's why we didn't call it a summit. We wanted it to be a symposium. You know, there was nothing cookie cutter about it. And we really wanted each of the speakers to be vulnerable and to tell us about the challenges that they'd had, because so many teachers, you know, they might say, oh, I overcame this and now I'm this wonderful, you know, whatever successful person, and you can be too if you do my work. Well, we really wanted to know a bit about their stories. You know, tell us more than that. Be vulnerable. Open up your heart so that people can engage with you and know that you've been through the same thing that they have. And the nice thing was, everybody we heard from about that symposium said it was very, very real. And they got so much out of it. We got so much out of it. I mean, my goodness, after every single, you know, interview that we did, we were having a chat about it and going, my goodness, this came up for me and that came up for you. And I learned this and you learned that. And, you know, love is the biggest thing that we have to deal with on this planet. It's our biggest challenge. It's the biggest thing that can help us get out of this mess that we've made. And we have to go deep. We really have to go deep to get to the root of it all, to find out what we're not and remember who we are.
well, and I think that point that you made, Sandie, about when we started the symposium, really wanting the speakers to be willing to talk about, you know, the vulnerabilities and the mastery, because I think one of the things within, you know, collectively, I think we're so programmed to want to reach our mastery. You know, we want to get to that place where, you know, we are the masters of our fates and those kinds of things. But the fact is that we somehow try to skip over the innocence, the vulnerability, the kind of the integration is one of my favorite words that we actually need to do in order for that mastery to really make a difference in our human experience. You know, it's one thing to have all kinds of multidimensional experiences, or to have, this kind of information coming to us. But if it actually doesn't change our human experience and, you know, doesn't make us nicer, more loving people, where we can actually change the dynamics of day in, day out, it's, you know, what good is it? You know, it's just something that happens out there somewhere. And so I was really impressed, and I know we talked about this several times, about the fact that, you know, every one of our speakers, they overcame so much, and they overcame things just like all of us have to overcome. You know, it's like there isn't anybody who's had a spiritual awakening that actually altered their reality that didn't really feel like, yeah, they had been through it to one degree or another. I was laughing because on the practitioner's Facebook page the other day, somebody had posted something and it said, everybody thinks that spiritual awakening looks like this, and there was a picture of this woman sitting there all zenned out, you know, and they said, yeah, it looks like this, and it's a woman in her bed with holding her head going, I'm not crazy, I'm not crazy, I'm not crazy, you know. So and I love the fact that they were all willing to be so expressive, and yeah, and that they actually learned to love themselves through that process, you know, because you have to, in order to be able to present yourself in the world like these individuals are doing.
You know, I've met so many authors and teachers and speakers, you know, in the 19 years that I've lived in America and been working in this arena. And when I came to America, I really thought, you know, that I'd cracked it, because I was going to the place where all this amazing, you know, expansion of consciousness and all these incredible people, you know, were going to be. And I was lucky enough to fall right into the center of all of it. And I was so disappointed when I found out how shallow so many people were. And it really, you know, made me kind of sit up and take note and think, well, these people are supposed to have all the answers, and yet they're not walking the talk. And I think, you know, bless their hearts, we all live behind a mask. We all want people to see us as these, you know, the successful radio show host, or, you know, Suzy, the successful, you know, teacher, speaker, author, whatever we're doing. We want people to see that. We don't want them to see what's behind that mask. You know, we don't want them to see all the pieces where we truly think that we've been broken over the years, and that's why we wear the mask. And so for me, having these people speak and show that, you know, they felt exactly the same, and it was in understanding that and wanting to find, you know, the love within themselves, find the wholeness within themselves. That was their road to their mastery. And I think that's the road we all take to mastery. You know, it's got to go in here. Yeah. It's not out there. So for me, it was, you know, an amazing experience. And doing Suzy's course was, and I think, you know, Suzy works with people who are incredibly sensitive energetically. She, you know, all of those people seem to gravitate to her. And I've always said, you know, me, I'm a hard nut. I'm not energetically sensitive. I don't have these experiences. And okay, I do have experiences, but I don't consider myself that energetically sensitive. I consider myself to be, you know, very grounded. And what Suzy, you know, was telling me and sharing with me through the work that we're doing is that so many people go out of their body because it's too painful to be in it. And they want to be there with all of that wonderful floaty, you know, energy and the information. But in fact, as long as they're out there, they're not really, you know, getting to grips with who they are. They're only playing with one part of who they are. And this is where everything happens, you know, right here on the earth. So this is where we have to come. This is where we have to find our mastery, find our self-love, and then do our work in the world to change it from within.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so many people, you know, so many energetically sensitive individuals, definitely the ones that I end up having a conversation with, so many of us have had some kind of early childhood trauma and that childhood trauma will send us up and out of our bodies, right? I mean, the world's not safe. And so it's the only sane thing to do is to go out into these other worlds and see where you can find kind of like the love that you knew could exist here. And so that's really purposeful. I mean, it's really purposeful that we have some of those kinds of experiences so that we can go out and connect. And I think that's actually what allowed me to be connected to children diagnosed with autism, because where are they? They're up and out of their bodies. And that's exactly where I was meeting them. Even though I was a speech language pathologist and very grounded at the time, I also had my own traumas. And so there was a big part of my being that wasn't really existing in the physical world, definitely wasn't enjoying the physical world and humanity for what it really has to offer, which is just amazing. And yet, did you need?
No, I just, you all are talking, that's so delicious. I was wondering if you would center us and bring us into it. I want to jump into your pool.
Let's do that. Sorry. Yeah, let's do that. All right. So so let's see how, basically, anytime I work energetically, I'm just asking the collective consciousness of the group what it would like. So whatever centering might mean for this particular collective consciousness is what we'll kind of pull forth. So everybody will first start by just breathing themselves into their body. So, there's multiple aspects of us, and we're floating all over the place. Just intend that you bring all of those aspects of yourself just right here, right now, for the next, 60 minutes or so, right? And so you're just breathing yourself into your body. And as you breathe yourself into your body, you'll probably notice that there's a reason why so many of those aspects of us are somewhere else. It's like you kind of come into the body. Does it feel liberating to be in the body? Does it feel confining to be in the body? Are you noticing that the body hurts somewhere, or that there's a thought that you probably just don't want to be thinking right now? So any of that information, anything that you've got your attention on simply because you came right back here, I'm just going to ask that we collect up all of that information. So that's all it is. We're just made up of information. And that information can be modulated all over the place. The more we know that we're information. So if we'll collect up all that information, it's causing disharmony, dis-ease. Yeah, all the places you go, all the places that just feel sticky. And I'm going to ask that we all put that information into a clear sphere. Placing information like that into a clear sphere just unifies it. It gives us a place to work with it. And within that sphere, the information in it, we're just going to drop a little blue star into the center of that information. And just ask that blue star to radiate, ask it to spin, ask it to dismantle that information. We've made certain things matter that might not need to matter anymore. So we're just going to allow that blue star to dismantle that information. And then almost notice as it dismantles that information, that sphere will get clear again. Whatever you put into it disappears. And then compress, make that sphere as small as you can make it. Let it pack as much of a punch as you can get. Condense it. And then bring it right back into your presence, right back into your presence in the body. And I'm going to ask you to see it implode into billions of frequencies of light. As it implodes, it's going to recalibrate those focal points that you had when you came into the body. There you go, imploded into billions of frequencies of light. And now stay present with the body and notice what you notice. There you go, just breathing into the body and then breathing your eyes open. There you go, nice. I like watching energetics, is fun. Oh, we couldn't hear you, Nicole. Okay. All right. So, yeah, so I do want to go back to the conversation about what happens to us in trauma. And, you know, so many energetically sensitive individuals, you know, have had some kind of trauma. It could be a passing moment, or it could be, you know, a really long condition. It doesn't really matter. But once we've gone up and out of our bodies and we're kind of surfing in that realm, more often than not, I notice this with so many people who are on kind of like a metaphysical journey or a spiritual journey. They get there and they stay there. It's a very rare individual who actually turns that corner and comes all the way back into their human experience. And the only reason to come back into your human experience is really for the love of humanity. It's really for what your presence could offer, not for necessarily anything you can do, but just when we make those full circle, anytime we've had like that full circle moment in our experience, we have integrated something that we, you know, parts of us that got separated are now integrated. And every single time we're here with that level of presence, you watch, it'll change the dynamics of your reality very quickly. You know, anybody who's had any issue that they've been working on, right? And they've worked on it from all different angles. And then all of a sudden they have that day where it's like, yeah, I got it. I've integrated it. I'm fine with that particular issue. About the time that they get there, all of a sudden their outer landscape starts to change quite a bit. It's like they no longer are attracting the same kinds of conditions and experiences as they were before. And so, you know, so what I was noticing, especially as I was working with some of the practitioners early on, is a lot of the practitioners that found me, they were energetically sensitive. They could connect with autistic children telepathically like that easily. And they had these traumas that they also were attempting to overcome. And so it was like we had to do both. We had to talk about the mastery and the telepathy and the capacity to interface in that way with those levels of consciousness. But we also had to talk about what sent you out there in the first place, and what were you looking for, and did you find what you were looking for? And if you did, are you now able to bring that all the way back into the human experience so that you actually feel safe here? So that not only you feel safe, but you create an environment just by your presence alone that allows something very different to exist here than has existed. And I read something, there's a book called The Presence Process by Michael Brown. It's one of, by far, one of the best books I've ever, yeah, thank you, Linda. It's one of by far the best books that I've ever encountered, both vibrationally, the process itself, it's absolutely amazing. Done it 2 or 3 times now. And in it, he says, most of us believe that we come here to get love, you know? And, you know, it's like, oh my gosh, as a child, I wasn't loved, or I was loved this way and I wanted to be loved that way. Well, the issue is that we didn't come here to get loved. We came here to be love. That's a very different point of view. And if we begin to understand that we're here to be love, then we begin to look at all of our early programming, our childhood traumas, our up and out experiences, all of it, just an experience, right? But it's all has a tendency to try to be driving us back to being what we came here to be, which as far as I can tell is love. I mean, why not? You know? So, so that's where Sandie and I really got into this conversation through the Journey Back to Love series about, you know, all these different individuals who have different pieces of this puzzle. We all have different pieces of this puzzle because we've all had different experiences. We've all attempted to integrate it. Sometimes we've succeeded in parts of it and other parts not. But regardless, it's like this is what we're all doing. We're all just learning to be the love that we are. And my theory is we're given one opportunity after another from the minute we get here until the day we die to love ourselves beyond what we thought we could love before. And that's really the crux of it, you know? So, yeah. Sandie, what else you want to add?
I don't know really, other than that clearly this was something that, you know, I don't want to make it be grandiose, but clearly this was something that needed to be aired at the time, because from the minute we started having these conversations, the whole thing just really came together as if by magic. I mean, there wasn't a single person we approached who didn't say, yes, absolutely, you know, we want to do this. And
yeah, that's because everybody loves you. Everybody loves you.
And they wanted, you know, to share what they know as well. And they, you know, and the whole thing fell together, even down to, you know, we opened it with Carista Luminaire, who's this amazing lady I've known for many, many years, she's got a website called Confused About Love. And boy, I mean, what she and her partner are doing on that website, everybody should check it out, because you get the opportunity to do this free little quiz. And you find out your love style, and you find out your attachment style. And she, you know, she did her thesis on attachment parenting, and she says, you know, it all begins in those early years. If we do not get that love, that, you know, we might get all the love in the world, but if we don't recognize it in the color, you know, that we wanted it, then as far as we're concerned, we weren't loved. And, you know, there's the trauma, and off we go. And she was able to explain in a very 3D fashion what happens in this 3D world. And it just kind of, the whole thing just went from there. The person that we really wanted and didn't actually get until we were almost ready to launch the thing, but we decided that we would have her end it, was just the most perfect ending. I mean, if ever I've met somebody who does the work, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Simran Singh, but you should have her talking. I mean, Simran is somebody who gets right in there. You know, she digs deep. I mean, she took 1.5 years off from everything and just sat with herself and did some, you know, really deep work. And she was able to share herself and her vulnerability. I mean, she shared things that she hasn't shared with anybody, and she shared them publicly for the first time, you know, on this. And to the point where afterwards she called me and she said, "Oh, did I share too much?" And I said, "No, you were just being honest." And we needed to hear that honesty, because, you know, when someone is that willing to be vulnerable, it gives us all permission to be vulnerable. And when we can see somebody who's so willing to go there, it gives us that impetus to say, yeah, you know, what can I find within me if I go there? So, you know, I'm not trying to push, you know, the whole symposium on you all, but it truly was a magical event from my point of view, as a participant, as well as somebody who helped pull the whole thing together. And I think that what we need to hear today, you know, we can't hear enough about love. We can't, you know, we can't learn enough about it. We can't experience enough of it. We've just got to, you know, keep at it, because, you know, we all know what's going on. And the headlines seem to get more and more shocking every day. You know, it's getting to the point where we're becoming unshockable. And that's a really sad and scary place to be. But I do believe that love, you know, just today, I've got my grandchildren staying with me from England, you know, a 12-year-old and an 8-year-old. And I have never seen two kids fight the way these two do. And it just wears you down in the end. And today I had a little conversation with them about love and about war and where war starts, you know, and it starts within our hearts. And I don't know if I made an impact on them, but my goodness, you know, this is the future. And they're experiencing so much that is not love, that we have to pull out all the stops, you know. That's all I've really got to say about it.
Well, we do. We have a preconceived idea too about what love is. I mean, we've been programmed to see it in a particular way and not to see love as the bigger picture. You know, we've not been taught that love is all, literally, you know, we hear love is all there is, but it's true. Love is all there is. So when we're having some kind of trauma, it's hard to hear, but that's love. And when we're leaving our bodies because we don't like that, that's love. And when we're finding all the resources that we find, that's love. And when we're coming back and bringing everything that we know, that so we can share it on forums like this, that's love. You know, and so every single aspect of it, you know, all these different facets of love within the all that is. And we've been trained to focus on a very small portion of what we think love is. Either it's romantic love or, you know, and even within romantic love, we have all of these preconceived ideas as to what that's supposed to look like and how that's supposed to play out. And so and that's why I'm saying it's like life gives us one opportunity after another to love beyond what we thought we could love before. You know, I have so many clients. I have one that I really love telling the story because this is a woman who, she was a practitioner, and we were talking about her, you know, she was very gifted in being able to connect and do all the things that we were doing. And she said to me, she goes, you know, I'm really struggling emotionally with all kinds of different things that are going on in my life. She said, I'm now single, and I was married. And she said, and my parents are a particular religion. I won't give the specifics, but particular religion. And they're not only in this, but they're you know, priest, they're the head of the church kind of thing. So here's this woman, and she goes through a divorce, right? So first thing, it's like, here's this opportunity. She's just blessed her parents with this opportunity to love beyond what they'd loved before. They didn't take that opportunity. They separated from her. They distanced themselves. Instead of bridging the gap to love, they create a bigger chasm. And so this woman goes on a little bit further, and she decides that she's no longer interested in men, but she's now interested in women. And so she forms a relationship with another woman, and there's batter up number 2. She gives her parents another opportunity to love beyond what they've loved before. But this is, again, just a bridge too far, and so they separate out even all the further. And all the while she's thinking that there's something wrong with her, that she's broken because she's trying to be true to her own experiences and to her own awareness of self. And so then comes, I want to have a baby. And her partner at the time, in the midst of this, leaves. So now she wants to have a baby all by herself. And so at the same time, she's doing this all by herself, right? So this is a woman that can't have her parents there. And I'm not knocking parents by any stretch. This can happen in any dynamic. But where people are unwilling to bridge the gap, right? And so what ended up happening is she did get pregnant, and her father ended up with something going on that they had to go to the hospital. She's in the hospital and she finds out that whatever he has, if she's pregnant, she might get. And so she has to acknowledge right there in the hospital with these two parents that she is indeed pregnant all by herself, right? And so after all this, and that's when the mother got it. That's when the mother got it, because she was fearful that she was about to lose her husband. She didn't want to lose her daughter in the meantime. She's got a new being coming into the world. That's where they were able to bridge the gap. And it's like, so here's a woman that has all of these amazing multidimensional skills, but also still has this trauma in her life where just daily living with mom and dad because of their beliefs and hers doesn't allow that love to actually be expressed. And so, again, it's like when we really begin to see that every time we love ourselves, and sometimes we have to take a stand for ourselves when we love ourselves, sometimes we have to own something about ourselves. Every time we do that, we actually are giving somebody else the opportunity to love beyond what they've loved before. And they may or may not take it, but don't, it's like I say all the time, it's like, let's not step away from loving ourselves, thinking that somehow, I'll just make it okay for somebody else. Because every time we step away from ourselves, we're actually kind of creating more of a gap, right? So anyway, it's very practical application is what it gets right down to. So.
I think it's almost time to turn it over to questions, isn't it?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Oh, oops,
Oh, we can't hear you.
Can't hear
okay.
you. There
we go. All righty. I'm new at this. Yeah. So I'm wondering
You
if anyone...
stunned her with all of this. She can't even operate a computer.
I'm still worried about that woman and her family.
It's much better today, I can promise you. It's really beautiful.
Good. Well, I have a question. Whatever happened to that one that one child that turned you on, that turned the key?
He still lives in Maine, and so probably about, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, I still had some contact with them. Mm-hmm. He actually, it was really crazy because he and I worked together full force for a year. And for a good part of that time, I kept saying to him, I'm your speech language pathologist, am I supposed to be telling your mother what's going on here? Because I don't, I'm bringing in all my speech pathology tools and flipping cards and getting them all set up, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And yet he was taking us in a different direction every single time. And for a long time, he said, don't tell her, she's not ready. Wow. And then what ended up happening, and then, you were a speech language pathologist, what that entails. Mm-hmm. So I did keep it to myself. I just did what we did. I did my speech pathology piece, and then I did that piece on the side. Mm-hmm. But basically what he did is he came to me almost, I would say, every day, every other day for that year, either telepathically or through bilocation or some other strange means, and dreams, whatever. And he would tell me what he needed to help him integrate. Because I truly, and I still to this day, I have no idea what somebody needs to help them integrate. But what I am able to do is connect with what they know they need. And so they tell me what they need from their multidimensional selves, and I shoot it back to them, just like I did with him. After a year, he was verbal, and he was pretty connected to himself. I think if you saw him today, you'd still say he has, autistic characteristics for sure. At least he did the last time I saw him. But the big thing that changed was that he did become verbal. And one of the things that he did say to me that I found, I did not understand it at all at the time, but was fascinating to me, was he said that in the late 1980s, that a lot of these souls started incarnating that were at a different vibrational frequency than what we had had up to that point. And he said, and then by 1995, some of them started getting stuck, is what he said. And so I was like, what does it mean? And he's telling me this telepathically, and I'm also kind of checking it with him through, you know, some of the single words that he was able to say at the time, and or what had developed so far. And I asked him, I said, what happened in 1995? And all I heard telepathically was something about a letter from the American Medical Association. So I Googled the American Medical Association, 1995, what changed, what letters. What I came across was in 1995, the American Medical Association put out a letter justifying why they went from something like 12 immunizations by the time a child was 5 years old and entered school to 36. That happened in 1995. So what he was saying to me, and back in 1995, nobody was talking about the correlation between autism and, you know, and any kind of toxicity or immunizations or those kinds of things. Now we talk about it like everybody knows it, but I had no idea what he meant. And as a speech language pathologist, you know, you say that to other speech language pathologists and they go, you are crazy. It's like, you know, so yeah, so lots of fascinating. So he's still around. Yeah. Still around.
Well, I'm going to open it up for others to ask questions. I always have a whole bunch of them, but okay, we're going to go with Janet Gunn from Denver, Colorado. You have the mic.
Boy, am I glad you're with us today. I've been associated with people who've experienced a lot of trauma, although I didn't personally, for years, and I've not had any trouble empathizing with them, and I really don't understand why that is, and trying my best to serve in any way I can with them, and really thought that I could love unconditionally pretty good until this morning. And I listened to a video of an interview between the girl from Frozen, the blonde with the blonde braid down her side, Ursula, and a white supremacist. I mean, this girl was beautiful, and she spent a day with white supremacists in Charlottesville before everything happened, and then through it as it happened. And I honestly can say I had no idea that there were people on the planet that could be so full of hate and anger and so convicted, so convinced that they were right. I've never seen anything like that in my whole life, and I'm just going, how do you heal that? How do you even, you know, because to me that's what love does, is it heals. How do you penetrate that kind of wall of anger and hate? And there's no fear. I saw no fear whatsoever. I saw just powerful hate and anger, and I've just all day long been trying to figure out how you, if I were, how that, where's the hope in bringing those people into love?
That's a really great question. Thank you, Janet. I don't have the answer.
Well, I didn't ask you. Because she's the one that knows.
No, it's like, that's the point. It's like, I don't know. And just like you said, it's like I said at the beginning, we're given one opportunity after another to love beyond what we thought we could love before. And so you got a beautiful opportunity this morning in that. And so as you were talking, the only thing that I would reflect back is, you know, a lot of times when we see something like that, and really it's so difficult to, you know, to even wrap our minds around. And the fact is that, you know, it's hard for us to wrap our minds around it because we couldn't conceive of being that necessarily ourselves. And yet at the same time, it's like there's a piece of us that we do need to have compassion for. There's a piece of that in us that we do need to have compassion for. And so it's almost like, so even when you're sitting there kind of going, oh my gosh, how can these people exist? And maybe even feeling bad because you aren't able to love them, right? You aren't able to love them unconditionally. To me, it's always the first look at that is always to turn the finger around and kind of go, okay, can I have compassion for myself right now? I really don't like these people. Really don't like what they stand for. Can I just be with that? Can I be okay with the fact and have compassion and try to create some ease around that? And what I noticed is if I do turn it around and say, okay, compassion for me first, and then turn around and kind of look at it again, sometimes it's a little bit easier to see where those individuals probably could use a heavy dose of compassion too. I mean, really, who has that kind of point of view unless they're needing something that they don't have, or they're needing something that they didn't get. Anytime where we're having to separate ourselves from somebody else or something else, there's some fear there. There's some, it's like it might come across as being all self-righteous and such, but there's some fear. So, but to me anyway, for what it's worth, I always do better if I kind of turn it around and kind of go, okay, man, I don't like this. Compassion for me first. It's like, it's okay. It's all right to feel that way. It's like, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be, yeah. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
If I could just add one
Go
thing.
ahead, Sandie.
I found really useful, and this came from Suzy. Suzy says things, and when she says them, I tend to write them down because there are several phrases like loving beyond what you thought you could love, which is such a powerful one. Mm-hmm. But there was a situation I was involved in, and I was so upset at somebody at the way they continually behaved to somebody else. And I was so worried for the person that they, was on the receiving end of the behavior. And Suzy said to me, as long as you're focusing on that worry and that anxiety, you're not in love. There is no love when there's worry there. They can't exist in the same place. Well, that was a big, one for me, because I looked at that and thought, wow, and I really love this other person, and if I'm worrying about them all the time, then, there is no love there. I'm depriving them of that love, and I'm depriving myself. So that was a powerful one for me. And the other one was that I suddenly realized that the person that I was angry with, that was demonizing the person that I loved, I was demonizing them. I'd been so angry at them, and they shouldn't be doing this and they shouldn't be doing that, So taking it back to yourself is a place where I think you can begin to find a way through it. Mm-hmm. I certainly did.
That's where all the power is too. It's like, I know in my own life, it's like there's, having come from trauma and that kind of thing, it's like everything in your environment just feels like it's too much. It's like mean people You know, it's like I used to always say, I didn't like mean people. It's like I wanted all the mean people to just go away. And then, you know, and then you kind of, I started turning that around at one point and going, okay, where am I mean to myself? Where am I mean to mean people? You know, where am I, you know, where am I not bridging that gap somehow? And we get to look at it from a couple different angles. And, you know, I mean, I'm not saying that this is something I'm successful at. This is one thing I get the opportunity to do, one thing after another. So it's like, and as long as we allow ourselves that opportunity, then by the end of our lives, to me anyway, we've grown in a way that we wouldn't have grown if we just simply pointed a finger. And I just, I don't know, there's something very empowering about turning it inside and looking for where we first can have compassion for ourselves. And there's a strength in that. You know, it makes it much easier to have compassion for other people. So.
If there's anyone else that wants to ask a question, and you can also put questions into the chat if you don't want to speak. So I know there's a couple people on the phone, so I'll ask them individually, but let's just see if anyone has a question or comment for Suzy or Sandie at this time. Just
if you're on the video, just wave.
Yeah, if you're on the video, just wave. But okay, I've got Leanne over here, and Leanne is unmuted. There you go.
I just have a comment because I was lucky enough to meet Suzy in person about 8 years ago or so. Wow. And I've had a few personal sessions with her, and I belong to her monthly, she has a monthly call. And I just want to say that I adore Suzy, and I consider her one of my go-to people. If big that I need to evolve through and is kind of looming, she's one of the people that I call. So I love you, Suzy.
Yeah, I love you too.
That's all. That's just a little loving.
Yeah. Love vibe going.
Okay, does anyone else?
Talia's waving.
Talia's waving. Okay, Talia, let's have your question, my sweet. There, let me see. I'm trying to unmute you.
Thank you.
There you go.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Suzy, this has been very eye-opening, but also just bringing me back to what's important. Sometimes what we struggle with is coming in touch with our own compassion and finding a way through that that judgmental feeling or whatever it is that come up for us. And it just this is one of my intentions, I'll say, is to find my way through passion in these times. And and now I'm remembering it's a gift to feel those things and how to feel those difficulties in ourselves. And that gift brings us to the point of opening a new door within ourselves of, like the Buddhist practice of Tonglen. Maybe you seem to be familiar with that, which does result, it's a compassion building practice where sometimes it's easy to come in touch with the trauma that you felt in your own life, but sometimes it's not so easy. Sometimes it's not so clear, your own feelings about it. And but when you have something like this, it opens you. Something like something like the Charlottesville experience for many of us, that we go through, that I certainly did. And I can relate to Janet. But just to use that as an opening into your own self to see where I have been closed in this. I don't know. I wish I'm going to have to go over this practice again because I'm really seeing that the beauty in it, and that compassion is gained through seeing yourself in this new light and opening the door inside yourself. So if you have anything to add about that, you seem to know something about Tungwin, but I would be happy to hear.
I just want to say one thing, maybe two. What the first thing is you said something so powerful when you said that you get to the point that it's a gift to feel these feelings. That's huge. That right there is huge, because we are conditioned to not feel something that feels bad. We're conditioned to drug it away or sleep with somebody away or eat it away, you name it, right? And so that's beautiful. I mean, you get to that awareness and you give yourself permission to simply feel what you're feeling. That could be a practice for a lifetime. You know, that right there could be a practice for a lifetime. And the other thing I was going to say is there's a Zen, kind of a modern day Zen Buddhist, Adyashanti, and who I've gone to a few of his retreats. I really like his kind of point of view and that kind of thing. And one of the things that he said at one of the retreats is, he said, you know, we've got all of these different aspects of ourselves. Like there's, you know, he calls it the 10,000 things. You know, there's all these different aspects of ourselves. So anything that we are kind of having a challenge externally, finding compassion for, it's like that. What he says is, he goes, there's nothing that hasn't existed that I can't find within myself. It might not be to the same degree, but I can always find it in myself. And he was saying that right there helped him have compassion for all kinds of things, because first and foremost, he did have to have compassion for himself, because whatever he was seeing outside of himself and condemning, it's somewhere in there, you know, to one degree or another. So, yeah, but that piece about, wow, I mean, you know that, honey, let me tell you, it's like, just keep doing that. It's, you know, having gratitude for the capacity to feel what we feel. It's huge, huge. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I'm muted. So thank you, Talia and Suzy. That was beautiful. Does anyone else have a question or comment they'd like to share with Suzy or Sandie? Okay, we're going to go over here to Mark Porteous.
And then we'll check in with
wait a second.
Then we'll check in with the couple that are on the phone.
Yeah, then we'll check with people on the phone. And you could also put things in through the chat. Go ahead, Mark.
I just want to start with gratitude for Bob and Noelle bringing everyone together, for Sandie bringing in Suzy. Thanks for sending out the information in advance. I've been looking at it and eager for this call. The meditation, very beautiful and powerful. There are so many pieces of connection for me. I really want to extend this conversation, but for right now, looking at just kind of the spectrum, and it's funny to use the word spectrum with autism, but the spectrum of the conversation from the real and practical of what's causing autism to the fifth dimension, what is the bigger cause of it, and what is the opportunity that comes with it. So I really appreciate you covering that whole spectrum and wrapping it all in love.
Wrapping it in a nice little bow. We'll give it a shot. Well, I can tell you what the kids told me. So, and basically what I asked them, of course, you know, why are there so many children diagnosed with autism now? What's happening? You know, have we done something wrong? Have we, whatever? And what Riley said anyway was that human consciousness was was unconsciously, collectively, we really knew that we needed a new level of consciousness on this planet. We knew that we needed to invite something else into the conversation, so to speak, so that we could evolve beyond what we had been experiencing, so we could love beyond what we've been loving before. And so from his vantage point anyway, which, okay, this is the multidimensional vantage point. I know that there are a lot of physical, psychological, neurological kind of vantage points as well. But from the spiritual, multidimensional vantage point, he said that basically humanity put out a call and said, come on, we need something here. And so all of these kids, all of these souls decided to incarnate. Many of these children hold a very high vibrational frequency, is the best way I can say it. But because their frequency is what it is, it's a mismatch for the physical human experience. So this is what Riley was trying to get me to understand at the very beginning. Here his light body or his dimensional bodies are floating above his physical body, and he can't interface them. Because the physical experience is too dense. There's not enough love being expressed on this planet, or wasn't being enough love being expressed on this planet at that time in order for him and children like him to fully embody. And so there was this whole, and so basically what he was saying is these souls were answering a call. And so you look at these souls that are really struggling. I mean, they're having a heck of a time. They've got all kinds of stuff going on. Their families go into all kinds of trauma just because they're here. Their families are given one opportunity after another to love beyond what they've been able to love before. But so here comes this whole population of individuals who shows up and then attempts to get integrated. Well, 20 years ago or so, when those early kids, 25 years ago, when those early kids started coming in, those individuals came in and they still have challenges getting integrated into the human experience. They're still very much up and out. But what you'll notice is more and more of the children are coming in now, and there's more awareness. Like when I was a speech pathologist and getting my master's degree in 1986, there weren't any autistic kids to have a conversation about. We didn't learn about it in school because there weren't any, or at least there weren't any that were identified as such. And and honestly, that was my saving grace, because I didn't know anything about autistic kids. Even though I was a pediatric speech pathologist in private practice and just took one as a client, I didn't know really what that kid needed. And I was so grateful that I didn't, because he was able to show me instead. But so when you think about we're what, 1 in, 48, 1 in 54, somewhere in that bracket, kids are diagnosed with autism. And so, or at least that's the statistic right now. But you think about how much has changed on this planet simply because that population showed up. So what has changed? We have a whole different relationship with our medical community. We no longer say, doctor knows everything, just do what the doctor says. That's changed dramatically. Our school systems have changed dramatically. I used to have principals of schools contact me and say, they usually wouldn't contact me until they had gone through all the other processes, try to figure it out all the other ways. And then they finally would get to me and they'd go, okay, usually don't call somebody like you, but we have, 30% of our population is ADD, ADHD, or autistic. What the heck are we supposed to do? And I told them, I said, in all honesty, I said, wait till it tips over the 50% mark, and then you're going to have to change in order to meet the needs of this new population. Right now, you're still struggling because there's still, like, your consciousness is still trying to push its way into theirs. Pretty soon, they're going to overtake you. And when they overtake you, you're going to have to step back and say, I'm willing to learn from you. right? So education's changed, medicine has changed, science has changed. You know, I remember back in the day, it's like you talk to, I sat and I watched as different parents got a diagnosis of autism with their child. And it floored me, you know, looking through energetic eyes, you see a parent who thinks their kid's kind of quirky, kind of weird, kind of, you know, but they love them. They're so excited that they're doing things differently and they're more out of the box than they were when they were kids. And then all of a sudden you have this big panel, psychologists, psychiatrists, speech pathologists, OT, PT, teachers, the parent and the child. And they're sitting there and all of a sudden the psychologist says, your kid has autism. And in that moment, I'll tell you what happens. That free-floating energy of all the possibilities that could be, all of a sudden go click. And there, all of a sudden, the lens that the parent sees that child through gets very narrow. And if the professionals say all the things that that kid's not going to be able to do in the future, it gets even narrower. And so now all of a sudden you have the very person that is trying to bridge this gap and love this child beyond what they've been able to love before, but now they have a really small lens. So what we really tried to do within the practitioner process and what Riley had taught me is we got to open that lens back up. We got to tell people who this population really is. What are they actually here to do? You know, which is basically support the evolution of human consciousness. And yes, there are human aspects to that, and there are what you would call maybe multidimensional aspects of that. There are lots of lenses to look at it through, but that's where we really started to have the conversation back in 1999. And I'm glad we did, because honestly now, you no longer hear doctors, or all doctors are no longer saying that this is some kind of death sentence. Now you're seeing education systems and medical professionals really, you know, kind of shifting the dynamic of how they approach this population. So they've done a lot of what they came here to do. And
wow.
Yeah, lots of what they came here to do. So lots of compassion for them, for sure. Not an easy job. Not an easy.
Very brave and generous souls.
Amazing soul.
Yeah.
Thanks for kicking off that discussion, Mark.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd love to have more of it.
Well, I'm looking at the time here, and I know that Sandie does have an appointment right up at the top of the hour. So I want to get away from Danama, make sure she's okay. Danama? Maybe she fell asleep. We'll check on her later.
I saw her move.
You saw her move. Okay, very good. All righty. But no, we don't have time for more questions, unfortunately. What I would like you to do is, Sandie and Suzy, I want you to tell them how they can get in contact with you. And is your Journey to Love, the symposium, still available? And, you know, thank you for your time. And please tell us, you know, how we can be in touch with you incredible, generous souls yourselves.
The symposium is still available, and we have put together a special coupon code if anybody on this call wants to, or in your group wants to check out, own the videos, see the whole thing. And I'm going to put it in the chat window too. But the website is thejourneybacktolovesymposium.com. And the coupon code is capital JB number 2, capital L3, JB2L3. If you put that in the coupon code slot in this store, I think you get about 50% off. So that's the symposium. If you want to know about Suzy's Journey Back to Love class, which I highly recommend, you can check out her website at susymiller.com. And if you want to listen to any of the radio shows that I do, you can go to Om Times magazine. So that's omtimes.com. I think it's .com. And just look up the radio tab, and you'll find the show that I host, which is their flagship show, is called What is Going On. and it's every Thursday at 4 p.m. Pacific time, and that's a 1-hour show. And if you want to know about the eclipse, next week, about 3 days after the eclipse, I've got one of the best astrologers that I know coming on to talk about it. What happened, what didn't happen, what we haven't seen yet, what may be going to happen. So that's next week on the radio show.
Wow.
All
That's
right.
exciting. Thank you. So that's Om Times.
Times.
As in OM Times.
OM, yes.
Yes.
They have a magazine that is completely free. That you can sign up for. It's an online magazine. They have some fabulous, I mean, you guys would absolutely love it because they are so into everything that you're into. And they also have the radio network with lots of different hosts on.
Fabulous. Thank you. I just want to put on here that Linda said the spectrum of autism and what they teach us reminds us of the addiction epidemic. Love and light to everyone. And thank you so much, Suzy. It was so wonderful to meet a fellow SLP graduate into another realm and bringing so much. And everyone is unmuted, so if you'd like to say goodnight and give them some love.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Suzy.
Good
Thank you so
night.
much.
Light and love.
Good night, Panama.
Sweet dreams.